In this video, we're going to walk through Handout 7-1 that covers the four different basic inventory valuation methods: the specific identification method, the Fifo method, the Lifo method, and the weighted average method. We're told that Quickie Grocery acquired the following 6 bottles of corporate cola soft drink. It acquired 1 bottle on January 2nd, another bottle on January 10th, another one January 12th, 16th, 25th, and 26th. And notice Quickie paid different prices for those bottles of cola. So altogether, Quickie acquired 6 bottles of cola. And at the end of January 31, account reveals that only 2 bottles remain. So if we acquired 6 bottles and only 2 bottles remain, the difference of 4 bottles is the number of bottles we sold. Recall our matching principle that says we need to take the cost of generating revenues and match those costs, that is, record them as expenses with the revenues they generated. So we've incurred a total cost of $20 to acquire inventory. And again, we will have capitalized that cost. And capitalize simply means record the cost as an asset. So we recorded $20 worth of inventory, and now we need to match that cost with the revenues they help generate. We're told under the specific identification method that Quickie kept track of each individual bottle and knows that it sold the bottles acquired on January 2, 12, 16, and 26. The first thing we should note is we would never use the specific identification model to value something like bottles of cola. We're going to use the specific identification method to value high-value inventory items such as automobiles, jewelry, items that have individual characteristics and have a high value. But let's go ahead and proceed nonetheless. So we are assuming we sold the bottles purchased on January 2nd, 12th, 16th, and 26th. So we add up the cost of all those bottles and we get a cost of goods sold of $13. Given that we've spent $20 on inventory or merchandise and we need to allocate that cost between current periods and future periods, if we said the cost of current sales is $13, then the remaining 7 will be assigned to ending inventory and matched with future revenues. And we can see that's the case because we've got a $2 value bottle from January 10th and a $5 bottle from January 25th. So our cost of goods sold, 13, and the value of ending inventory of 7 equals the total cost that we spent on acquiring inventory of $20. Let's go ahead now and take a look at our Fifo method, first in, first out. Before we go through the actual calculations, let's consider the types of goods whose physical flow will want to follow a first in, first out flow. That's going to be anything that's perishable. Think food items. If we've got dairy products, we've got produce. We want to be sure to sell the earliest items first, because if we don't, they will spoil. The same thing would apply to fashion items. We want to sell off our winter merchandise before the summer styles come in. Technology. We want to sell those oldest computers and cell phones before the new ones come in, or they will rapidly lose value. So from a physical flow perspective, items that are perishable typically follow a first in, first out method flow, and that's the type of cost method that ideally we will assign to that inventory. We don't have to have the cost flow method match the physical flow, but ideally we should. Let's go ahead and take a look at those calculations. So first in, first out assumes that we're going to sell those earliest acquired items first, and once we've sold those, we'll move on to the later acquired items. So under our Fifo method, if we've sold first 4 bottles, the first bottle will be from January 2nd. We will have sold a bottle from January 10th. We'll sell the one from January 12th and 16. The total cost we're going to assign to the bottles that we sold will be $10. Of course, that will leave $10 in ending inventory, and we can see that from our calculations as well. We had 1 bottle at $5 from January 25th and another bottle at $5 from January 26th. So again, our cost of goods sold of 10 plus ending inventory of 10 has to equal the total cost that we incurred on acquiring merchandise. Let's go ahead now and take a look at our Lifo method, last in, first out. From a physical flow perspective, items that will follow a last in, first out method will be non-perishable items. Think of that pile of gravel, that pile of mulch, the bucket of bolts. When we have that pile of gravel there and a customer wants to buy some, we don't reach to the bottom of the pile and grab it. We grab whatever's sitting on top, which would have been the last in, and it will be the first out. Same thing with that bucket of bolts or perhaps that pile of mulch. Again, our cost flow doesn't have to equal the physical flow, but ideally it should. From a last in, first out perspective, we're going to start on January 26th and then move to the 25th, the 16th, and the 12th. So, the first bottle we sell, we will assume we purchased on January 26th for $5. The next one will come from January 25th, then the 16th, and then the 12th. We add up the cost of the items acquired on those days, and we're going to have cost of goods sold of $17, which means ending inventory will be valued at $3. And once again, we can prove that out because we've got one bottle from January 2nd at $1 and a bottle from January 10th at $2. So cost of goods sold of 17, ending inventory of 3. Let's look at our final method, the average cost method, or sometimes called the weighted average cost method. In the weighted average cost method, we're simply going to take our total cost that we spend on inventory during the period, which was $20, and we're going to divide it by the number of items we purchased, which in this case was 6 bottles. So the average cost per bottle is $3.33, and our cost of goods sold will be four bottles at $3.33 or $13.33, and ending inventory will be the remaining $6.67, which is 2 bottles times $3.33 per bottle. One of the few items I can think of that would actually follow a physical flow of the average cost would be the gasoline you're purchasing at Turkey Hill or Sheetz. When the tanker truck drives up, it empties its tank into that in-ground storage tank, and the old gas and the new gas mix together, and you pump out an average mixture of whatever's there. In comparing our inventory methods, one thing we can notice, our choice of inventory methods doesn't impact our total cost. Our total cost is what we paid to acquire the inventory for. All we're doing is allocating the cost to current sales, in other words, assigning that cost to cost of goods sold, a current expense, or letting the cost sit in ending inventory, and that means we will allocate it or match it with future revenues.